What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, continuing my deep dive into Santana's studio catalog. Studio exclusively. I'm going to save Moonflower, a half live, half studio album, for a separate live video. This is the back half of the 70s, the non-Greg Rowley years. Six albums in this. Not doing the Carlos Santana solo albums, in which it wasn't his band, it was under his spiritual name. Not doing the collaboration albums. These are just Santana band albums. I'll save the other stuff for a different video. Zappa connection, I think, is pretty obvious. Carlos Santana's secret chord progression, variations on that G minor thing. In summer 80, I think it was a summer 80 tour, he would quote the Zombies' She's Not There, which Santana covered on Moonflower, became kind of a hit. He was covering Santana's version of that. That's my belief, because it doesn't sound like the Zombies version. It sounds like Santana's version. Plus, in 84, August 31st, I believe was the 31st, at the end of Why My Face to Chicago, there's a little improvised jam, and Tunis is playing a bass riff vamp that sounds a lot like Singing Winds, Crying Beasts. Plus, there's other Santana references throughout. I'll try to find them for the next video. But anyways, 6 albums. We'll go to 6 to 1. I'll pop the list on the screen when we're done. That's about it. Let's get on to number 6. My number 6 in this era is their officially 11th studio album, 1979's Marathon. Other than live albums, this is the most recent Santana studio album I own. I did not get into Santana until college. When I did get into the band, we had 2 of the best record stores in the world, Rasputin's and Amoeba. All of my Santana albums I bought used at those record stores. And I pretty much went in chronological order. I'd already been in love with the debut album for years, but I got the deep dive in college. This is where I stopped. I was able to buy the albums pretty much in sequence. I think I bought a bunch, like 3 or 4 at once, and listened to them in order. But by the time I got here, I just stopped. I was seeing Santana live a lot. He played the Bay Area a lot. Sadly, there were a lot of like fundraisers, AIDS benefits, different kind of benefits at Santana. Sadly, that we had to have those. Santana played a lot of those. He was awesome. Opened for the Dead a number of times. Wasn't a big fan of his newer stuff. This is where I stopped listening. The highlight of this album is a bass solo. Who's the bass player on here? David Morgan has a bass solo. There's a pair of tracks called Stand Up, open side 2, and it goes right into Running, and Running is essentially a bass solo. Highlight of the album, the bass solo is fantastic. There's another instrumental on here that's pretty good called Aquamarine. It's also the highlight, though it almost seems like it's half-baked. Like it takes a while to develop, and then once we kind of kick in and up it, we don't really go anywhere, and then we kind of bring it down too early. Interesting little track. There's some nice guitar solos on here. The energy is a little guitar focused, but it just sounds like radio rock. A lot of riffs driving these songs. Every once in a while we get some Latin flavor. Just not much to it. Stay, parentheses, Beside Me, is a Barry Manilow vocal away from being Copacabana almost. It's just, there's percussion, but then we get a almost slightly disco-y vibe. There's just not much to it. The opening track, Marathon, is this short little instrumental that is weirdly all over the place, kind of works. It kind of bodes well, thinking, all right, we got an instrumental open. But then after that, Lightning in the Skies, generic radio rock, You Know That I Love You, radio-friendly pop vibe, All I Ever Wanted, generic riff rock. Oh, and the kick drum in that is just really high in the mix. Almost sounds like Zappa overdubbed a kick drum and didn't know how to like put it way too prominent in the mix, and it's the only thing you can hear. Reminds me of that. Stand Up, awesome funky guitar intro, like little chorded funky guitar, and then once we get the actual song, kind of doesn't deliver. And Love closes out with an All We Need Is Love is the chorus. I mean, kind of generic. Yeah, just not much to this. Just, yeah, this is where I checked out, and it's just kind of I don't know. Yeah, really not much to this. My number 6, Marathon. My number 5 is their 10th 1978's Inner Secrets. For reasons unknown, I'm sure there are reasons, I'm sure we know what they are. There's 4 covers on here. Just 4 covers, and they're all on like the first half of the album. Opens up with the cover of Traffic's Dealer. Promising start. Those opening sort of arpeggiated chords and that kind of intro is really cool, but I don't think they execute the song that well. They tack on a little jam at the end called Spanish Rose, which doesn't quite have the Gypsy Queen tack on an instrumental at the end of a song epicness as they had done earlier in their career. Great choice, good potential. Don't think the execution is great. They cover the 4 tops, One Chain Don't Make No Prison. Kind of radio friendly. There was a nice little percussion breakdown, nice closing solo. Interesting choice. But then we get a cover of classic for Stormy, just a radio friendly 70s R&B version. And then they cover Blind Faith's version of Buddy Holly's Well All Right. And just don't know why this needs to exist. Just don't do much. They just don't do much to it. Sorry, Santana. The highlights of this are 2 instrumentals. Life is a Lady / Holiday. Life is a Lady has this kind of aching, slow, Santana emotional piano guitar type thing. And then we get this like midway through, Santana starts playing these little jauntier little chords, a little bit peppier, picks up. Pretty nice little instrumental. And then it closes with a horribly titled track called Wham! With an exclamation point. Maybe that's where George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley got the idea. Nice high energy instrumental, percussion jam to open, some high energy guitar. But everything else is just kind of like, vocals are kind of bland, slightly funk rock numbers, just not much to it. It's generic riff rock. Oh, Open Invitation sounds like Lenny Kravitz, like his entire career is inspired by that song. Just sounds like a bad Lenny Kravitz song, and yet Lenny Kravitz had not yet made a song. So The Facts of Love starts off promising and then just goes like a really nice kind of guitar start and stop intro, but then drops into something that's just just not much to this album. The 2 instrumentals redeem it. Other than that, it is kind of like Marathon. It's just, all right. They're kind of running out of steam here at the end of the 70s. All right, that's my number 5. My number 4 is their 8th 1977's festival. Moonflower would be released after this. I like this album. I think this is a pretty strong album. It's fun. I think it's a drop off the one that's going to be next on this list, where I think those first 7, including the one that's next, are really, really strong. This one is much stronger than the first 2 on this list, but we're starting to see some sort of Santana templates, just like the last 2 songs on here, Try a Little Harder, Maria Caracoles, are like the most a lot of this actually is very Latin flavored. But by the time we get to the end of this album, it just feels like, all right, we need a upbeat, percussion-driven party song. Then we need maybe some horns, like an Everybody's Everything type vibe with, that kind of thing. So we're starting to get a little bit of that, like, we've done this before vibe, but I still think the energy is good. I still think it's fun. Starts off with a song called Carnival, which is a dance song, celebratory, great opening, sets the mood for the album. The first 3 songs are actually a nice sequence. They go right into each other. Carnival, into Let the Children Play, into Jugando, which is playing. So we have to let the children play, and then we actually get to watch them play. They're all really good songs, nice guitar energy. You've got some organ solo, Let the Children Play. Jugando is a really nice guitar riff, nice percussion flurry. It's just a really nice instrumental jam with a nice spacey keyboard solo, some guitar playing. Really good opening sequence of 3 songs. Give Me Love then kind of shows where we're going to be going from here on out. Sort of just a 70s soft rock pop vibe. Vocals really don't do anything for me. The vocalist can sing. I just don't think they have a really distinguished... Almost all of his vocalists after Rolly just don't have that identifiable, like, oh, that's a Santana vocalist type thing. Varejo Vermelho, sorry for mispronouncing that, a cover, awesome song, kind of a low-key Spanish music, haunting, kind of beautiful. Then we go into this kind of more festive, traditional flavored instrumental. It's hip, it's jazzy, it's swanky, it's fun, it's absolutely awesome. really good track. And then the closing on side A. Side A on this is a pretty strong. Let the Music Set You Free. Yeah, we got sort of a cheesy title there. We're getting into the cheesy sort of generic Santana lyrics. New wave-ish kind of keys before we get a nice big drop. Then we get this really organ funky rock song that's pretty good. It's dancing. They kind of just say, let the music set you free over and over and over again. And I will say this, the music does kind of set you free. Get these little pocket jams throughout it. It's a good way to end side A. Starting off with Carnival, ending with Let the Music Set You Free. We're not breaking any new ground, but it's a fun side of music. Revelations, open side 2, really strong. Nice piano ballad opening, slowly building with some guitar action. Then we get these almost Marshall Mars-esque building drums. Things get chaotic for a while. Carlos is absolutely shredding. Kick off pretty well. Then we get Reach Up, which has almost kind of a Jeff Beck mid-70s fusion vibe to it. We get a nice straight up funk jam, a nice synth solo in there, a nice guitar solo. Then we get The River, which is like a straight up ballad. I think there's strings on here. And this is in my notes, which is what I think of The River. Wonderful Tonight-esque, but not as good. So, yeah. And then we close the album with Try a Little Harder, Maria Caracoles. I don't think it's a bad album, but I definitely don't think I think we're kind of treading Latin party, upbeat music vibe, which is not a bad thing. But this is almost, knowing where we're going to go after this, the previous 2 albums I talked about, you're like, okay, this is the beginning of the slide down. Had it been a stop, and the next one is another maybe instrumental thing or doing something different, then I like this album. It's a feel-good album. It has a different vibe. But in the trajectory of albums, it's like, I think this is the first signifier. I'm like, all right, we're going to kind of dip from here on out. However, the album before this, I really, really like. But that is my number 4, Festival. My number 3 is their 7th, Amigos. Came out in 1976. I absolutely love this album. I think this is like maybe the most fun album Santana has done up to this point. The opening song, Dance Sister Dance, Baila Mi Hermana, I think kind of shows you where Santana is at this point, because in the middle of this song, we get this really nice, long, sort of slightly proggy, slower, jammed out intro. We close with a really nice, awesome, jammed out outro. We get your typical, let's hold a note for a really long time Carlos Santana energy in there. We get a little just indulgent proggy action at the end. It's 8 minutes and 15 seconds. But in like the middle, not third, but somewhere in the beginning before the ending jam, we have your standard Dance Sister Dance, sort of a Latin flavored Carlos song that had this been released, I think, on any album after this, we wouldn't have had that ending jam, or we might not have had that cool intro. But here we get all of those things because Carlos is still indulging in that. And I think it makes for, it sets the tone for this album really, really well. There's only really one other song on here which kind of dips into like, okay, this is where we're going in the 70s. That's side 2's Tell Me Are You Tired, which just has this slower 70s rock vibe. Funky 70s vibe, but a very 70s vibe. Everything else on here I think is just absolutely fantastic. Second song, Take Me With You, an instrumental, 5.5 minutes of high energy Latin rock. We got some great guitar, got some great organ. We kind of drop into this mellower second half where Carlos gets to play some like cleaner playing that's actually sweet. The bass playing on here is fantastic. David Brown on bass. Then we get third song, closing out side A, the super ultra funky Let Me. Tom Coster co-wrote this on keyboards. Just the funk on this. I think there's some clavinet action on here that's just absolutely ridiculous. These first 3 songs I think are fantastic. I just think it's a great time. The shredding is amazing. The funk is amazing. The vocals actually work. Let Me, side A on this album is amazing. Side B is also really good. Opens up with Gitano. Not sure how to pronounce the G on this one. Very Mexican folky with an acoustic guitar. Then we go into more upbeat Latin groove with some more fantastic bass playing. Get a traditional Latin rock vibe with some Spanish vocals on here. This is where we get the title for the album, a repeated refrain of Amigos. Tell Me Are You Tired follows next. The most 70s rock, the most 70s thing on here. Starts slow, goes into a funky vibe, very 70s. We get the soaringly beautiful, the achingly beautiful, the did Carlos invent the guitar solo instrumental? This kind of thing. Europa, Earth's Cry, Heaven's Smile. The bass playing on this is fantastic. Absolutely amazing guitar solo vehicle. Epic, epic, epic. And then we close out with Let It Shine. Super funky guitar intro, giant funk bass groove laid down on this thing. Once we get into the actual song itself, I don't think it quite pays off after the awesome intro, but the vibe is still cool. The keys have a very Stevie Wonder vibe. It's a strong way to end the album. I think this is a fun album. It's fantastic. It's a palindrome time-wise, 41 minutes and 14 seconds, apparently. So, I don't know. I think this is a good album. High energy, definitely a little more concise and reined in than the previous stuff. But Coster on keys, super funky, super funky. This is the funk album. This is a fantastic listen. My number 3, Amigos. My number 2 is Santana's Fifth Welcome. When people talk about Santana's spiritual side and how he expresses it through his music, there are 3 albums where I think it's clear that Santana's tapping into something that is special to him and important to him spiritually. Caravanserai, the one that precedes this one, and the one that follows, the one that will be next on this list. You can just feel it in this album. And it feels very much like a spiritual journey. And even if you look at the titles of the songs, you get that. But it's interesting because it opens up and closes with instrumentals. And the opening instrumental is called Going Home. The closing instrumental is called Welcome. But the titles very well could have been flipped because the opening song really sounds like we come in with this like seeping organ sound. It almost seems like we're here. We're going to open this box. We're going to bring everything out that we're going to celebrate. We're going to celebrate it over the course of the next 7 songs. And then on that last song, we'll put it all back in the box and we'll go home. Some like gentler, jazzy flourishes at the end. This one's a little more percussion driven. Got some synth, some organ action. Titles are interesting. I feel like they should be flipped because it really does feel like they're welcoming you into the experience on the first track and then you're going home on the last track. 5 of the songs are instrumentals. I think the weakness on this album is the vocals, as I've said before. Good vocalists, they can sing. I just think Carlos needs something heavier than this is more of a jazzy soul R&B 70s vibe that's a little too soft for my tastes. McLaughlin is on here, has a nice guitar solo at one point on something. I think the closing Flame Sky, the penultimate Flame Sky, this 12-minute instrumental jam that is fantastic. Highlight of the album. And part of the journey in which the thing in which we peak is the penultimate song. And then after that, we're exhausted. And all right, let's go home now. We've had our revelation. Alice Coltrane is on here, helped arrange the opening track. Jules Broussard plays sax on that Flame Sky. He is also on the next out, the one that's going to precede this on the list. I think he has a little more of a better impact on that. But it's a solid album. Really only one song kind of jumps out as maybe not fitting in. There's a song that closes. No, it's the second song on side 2, Light of Life, which starts off with like a string intro. And then we drop into this like soft rock, jazzy pop song. And the strings just don't work. They feel like they belong to a different album. Everything else on here, I think the instrumentals are the highlights. Samba de Sausalito, really nice percussion bass-led instrumental, some great keyboard work on that. What else do we have? When I Look Into Your Eyes is some Santana-flavored soft rock. I think we even get some flute in there. Nice closing funky groove to save what's an otherwise sort of like light and airy song. Mother Africa, an awesome instrumental, very percussion-driven intro, some really cool keyboard work, nice bass-driven jam in the middle. I think we get a keyboard solo. We get a sax solo, though I don't think it's Broussard playing sax on Mother Africa, right? Somebody else is dropping that sax solo. Oh, no, that's where he is. Broussard's on that one. He's not on Flame Sky. That's right. But yeah, it's a solid album, some great playing. I think it's very much an album that needs to be listened to in its entirety. I think the sequencing works well. I think it just feels like a singular spiritual experience, and it's a great listen, and it's Carlos Santana just sticking to his guns and not giving into demands. And yeah, somebody left a comment on my previous Santana video right there. Bill Graham urging Carlos to get away from the long instrumental jams and maybe go into like something more pop friendly. I'm so glad he didn't listen to Bill. Maybe Bill was trying to like protect the Dead. Hey, that's the Dead's territory, man. Get away from there. But this is a good listen, man. This is a fun listen, and I think it is there is something kind of spiritual about it. My number 2, welcome. My number 1 is their 6th 1974's Borboletta, Butterfly. We have quite awesome musicians on here. Jules Broussard plays sax on 4 songs. Who else? We had Stanley Clark is on bass for 4 songs. Airto is on percussion for a bunch of songs. It also, another album that like Welcome Before, it very much feels like you should listen to this in one continuous sitting. It definitely increases, I think, in intensity as the album goes on, and it definitely has a journey-like feel to it. Not the band journey, but like an actual walking somewhere journey. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 instrumentals out of the 12 tracks, and that is a plus. As again, I think the single weakness is not the ability of the vocalists, but the choice of vocalists. Opens up with something called Spring Manifestations, which spring is manifesting itself. Again, with the like, we're starting a new journey. Welcome in, join us. That goes into Canto de las Flores, the song of the flowers, people, because spring is here. Really nice, simple bass riff. We get some flute, very airy jazz vibes to this thing. That goes into Life is Anew. Really slow, dramatic vocal intro. Upbeat, poppy 70s rock here. The vocals kind of work in this case. Leon Patillo's bringing it. The Santana guitar solo starts off with one long, single held note. Pure Carlos brilliance in that guitar solo. Give and take, the hardest, funkiest thing, song number 4 is finally okay. We can still be heavy. We can still bring the funk, a little bit of the hardness. Kind of nice. One with the Sun. Very tasty guitar for like an airy, jazzy type song. This is an instance where I think Santana is elevating the song with his guitar playing. But it works because the entire album has this vibe and has this flow. And I don't think an album of One with the Suns will work. It works in the context of this album, though I can't say it's my favorite. Aspirations, it starts with this rising of aspiring volume, great percussion organ, some bass, incredible saxophone, absolutely amazing, really good energy. The sax just goes off on this. Instrumental to close side A. Side B opens up with Practice What You Preach. Some nice solo guitar with some organ chords to kind of open off. Very sparse. Percussion eventually comes in. We get the song drop. And we get some, like a poppy little song with some okay vocals. Nice melodic guitar. Song is okay. Mirage, really awesome bass in here. Though vocals, again, weakness on this album. And then the last 5, 13, 16 minutes, 4 songs, all instrumental. It just ends really, really strong. Here and Now, very jazzy guitar, sax, back and forth going at it. Then in the intro, then the bass comes in, kind of has a free-for-all vibe. About almost at the 2-minute mark, we drop into like this funky, low-key, kind of weird groove, kind of cool. Then we go to Flor de Canela, which has this percussion, crazy bass theme. It's like a 2.5-minute song. Nice solo in here. Promise of a Fisherman. 8 minutes of just the percussion continues out of Flor de Canela, and then the organ comes in, then Carlos solos, and things get kind of proggy, and then it just turns into this awesome like jam vehicle with an absolutely amazing solo, an amazing jam, some amazing bass playing. Just like Welcome, The entire album leads, like everything that happens seems to be pointing you, like guiding you towards the penultimate track. On Welcome, it was Flame, whatever the second half of that song is called, I always forget. And this one, it's Promise of a Fisherman. But there's a journey into that. And then the closing, Borboletta, which was written by Erto, is just percussion and chanting and kind of wraps up the sort of what feels almost like a ritualistic spiritual experience. Absolutely amazing album. Another one of those I just think deserves to be listened in its entirety from start to finish. Make the time to do it. And this one doesn't have anything like the strings like Welcome does. It just take you out of it. I think the whole thing has a nice continuity and a nice flow and works really well. And that's my number one, Borboletta, Butterfly, in Portuguese. That is what they look like in typewritten form. These 6 albums. I'm not going to put up the previous list. I'm just going to leave this up here. But just to give away the ending, the top 4 albums are all ranked 1 through 4. Borboletta would be, at this point, number 5. Not saying that it's going to stay at number 5. Maybe Santana surprises us later in his career. I honestly don't know because, like I said earlier, the last album I own is Marathon. I've heard at least once most of the albums that follow this. So, but I haven't really given them an in-depth listen, so we'll see if anything surprises me. But I have a feeling the 80s is going to be kind of rough. But anyways, that's what I got. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Let me know what you think of these. And I highly recommend the top 3 on this list. I think Festival is when we get to like, okay, maybe not. But Welcome, Borboletta, and Amigos, I think are all fantastic, fantastic albums. Thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.